There's a recipe people have been mixing in their backyards for decades that can make a patch of weeds collapse, brown, and shrivel in less than a single day. It costs almost nothing, and it comes from 3 things most people already have in the kitchen. And the strange part is this: most people who try it get it completely wrong. They spray it on the wrong weeds, at the wrong time of day, mixed in the wrong proportion. And then they decide vinegar does not work. But vinegar does work. There's real science behind it. The United States Department of Agriculture tested it in a laboratory and in the field. And what they found surprised even the researchers. The catch is that vinegar does exactly one thing extremely well and one thing very poorly. And if you do not know the difference, you will waste your afternoon and your money. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you what vinegar actually does to a weed. The exact recipe that works: the weeds. It erases almost overnight, and the weeds that will laugh at you and grow right back. Stay with me, because the mistake most people make is in the very first step. Let me start with what is actually happening when vinegar touches a weed. The active ingredient in vinegar is something called acetic acid, an organic acid that occurs naturally when sugars from plants ferment. The household vinegar in your kitchen is about 5% acetic acid, and the rest is mostly water. When that acid lands on a leaf, it does something very direct. It destroys the cell membranes on the surface of the plant. Think of it like a sponge being squeezed dry. The acid pulls the moisture out of the leaf tissue, the cells rupture, and the green surface of the weed dries out and dies. The technical word for this is desiccation. That is why, on a hot sunny afternoon, you can spray a young weed and watch it wilt within hours. By the next morning, that weed can look brown, crisp, and dead. This is real, and it is fast, and it is exactly where the 24-hour reputation comes from. But here's the part nobody tells you. That fast browning is happening on the leaves, on the part of the plant you can see. It is not necessarily happening to the roots, and that single fact is the entire secret to using vinegar correctly. Before I go further, I want to be honest with you about something, because there are a lot of channels that will not be. Vinegar is not a magic weed eraser that works on everything. What it is a contact killer. It kills what it touches. It does not travel down into the root system the way some commercial chemical weed killers are designed to. So the question is not does vinegar kill weeds? The question is which weeds? And the answer comes straight out of the research. The United States Department of Agriculture ran a study at their research center in Beltsville, Maryland. They sprayed vinegar on some of the most common and most stubborn weeds in the country: lamb's quarters, foxtail, velvet leaf, pigweed, and Canada thistle. And what they found was a clear pattern. On young weeds in their first 2 weeks of life, ordinary 5 and 10% vinegar killed them outright. Young, small, tender weeds with only 1 or 2 leaves do not stand a chance because the acid overwhelms them before they have built up any reserves. But older, larger, established weeds were a different story. The bigger the weed, the more it survived. This is the first rule, and it is the one most people break. Vinegar is a weapon against young weeds, not old ones. If you wait until that weed is knee-high and woody, you have already lost the easy battle. The best time to spray is when the weed is small, tender, and recently emerged. The second rule is about the weed itself, and this is where people waste entire bottles. Broadleaf weeds are far more vulnerable than grassy weeds. A dandelion rosette, a young thistle, chickweed, clover, purslane, these broad, flat leaves catch the spray and soak up the acid. Grassy weeds, with their narrow, upright blades and waxy coating, shrug a lot of it off. So if you are fighting crabgrass, vinegar alone is going to disappoint you. And the third rule is the one that separates a weed that stays dead from a weed that comes back stronger. Annual weeds versus perennial weeds. An annual weed lives for 1 season and dies. If you burn down its leaves before it sets seed, you have basically won. A perennial weed stores energy in a deep root or a taproot, and it lives for years. When you spray vinegar on a perennial, you brown the top, but the root is sitting safely underground, full of energy, ready to push out fresh leaves in a week or 2. The most striking example from the research was Canada thistle. 5% vinegar killed 100% of the top growth. The leaves you could see were completely destroyed, but it was top kill. The thistle root survived, and a plant like that will return. Dandelions are the same. That long taproot is almost impossible to reach with a contact spray, so you will see the leaves die overnight, feel like you won, and watch it come back. This is the honest truth about vinegar, and once you understand it, you can finally use it the right way. Now let me give you the recipe, because the proportion matters. The base is vinegar. Ordinary white vinegar at 5% works on young, tender broadleaf weeds. For tougher jobs, there are stronger horticultural vinegars sold at higher concentrations, and I will give you a serious safety warning about those in a moment. To that vinegar, many people add a small amount of salt and a few drops of liquid dish soap. The dish soap is the part most people skip, and it is the most important part. Soap is what is called a surfactant, On its own, vinegar beads up and rolls off a waxy leaf like water off a raincoat. The soap breaks that surface tension, so the vinegar spreads out and clings to the entire leaf instead of dripping to the ground. That single ingredient is the difference between a spray that works and a spray that runs off. A word on the salt. Salt does add to the drying effect, but salt does not break down the way acetic acid does. It builds up in the soil, and over time, it can make a patch of ground hostile to anything you actually want to grow there. So salt is fine on a gravel driveway or a crack in the pavement where you never want green again. It is a bad idea in a flower bed or anywhere near plants you care about. That is the honest trade-off, and I would rather you know it now than learn it next spring. Now the safety warning, and please do not skip this. The vinegar in your kitchen is mild, but horticultural vinegar, sold at 20% acetic acid or higher, is a completely different animal. At those strengths, acetic acid can burn your skin and cause serious eye injury, including permanent damage. If you use the strong stuff, you wear eye protection, you wear gloves, and you keep it away from your face and away from children and pets. This is not a suggestion. At 20%, this is a chemical that demands respect. So let me put the whole method together for you in plain terms. Spray on a hot, dry, sunny day, because heat and sunlight speed up the drying, and the acid works best when it is not being diluted by rain or dew. Spray young weeds, not old ones. Aim for broadleaf weeds, where the spray has a flat surface to cling to. Use the dish soap so the spray actually sticks, and coat the leaves thoroughly until they are wet, and then understand what you are watching. The browning you see in the next several hours, and the dead crispy leaves by tomorrow, that is the top kill, and it is real. For a young annual broadleaf weed, that top kill is often the whole battle, and it is gone for good. For a perennial with a deep root, expect it to try again, and be ready to spray the new growth the moment it appears. Hitting a perennial again and again, every time it dares to push out a fresh leaf, slowly starves that root. It is not one spray and done, it is persistence. And that is the real method that actually works, instead of the fantasy that one spray erases everything forever. If you want the complete reference, I put together a full guide that goes much deeper than one video can. It has the exact mixing ratios for every concentration, a breakdown of which common weeds surrender to vinegar and which ones need a different approach entirely, the safest way to handle the strong horticultural vinegar, the timing calendar for spraying through the season, and the natural follow-up methods that keep weeds from coming back at all. The link to that guide is the very first link in the description, and it is also pinned in the top comment. Now let me show you the weeds that vinegar erases almost overnight, the ones where this trick genuinely feels like magic. The easiest wins are young, broadleaf, annual weeds growing in full sun, young pigweed, young lamb's quarters, chickweed, purslane, and newly sprouted broadleaf seedlings in the cracks of your patio or driveway. On these, a thorough coat of vinegar on a hot day can leave nothing but brown, crisp remains by morning. These are annuals, so once the top is dead before they seed, they do not come back from that plant. This is the 24-hour result that gives vinegar its reputation, and on these weeds, the reputation is completely earned. Now the weeds that will fight back. Establish dandelions with that deep taproot. Canada thistle, which the research showed survives at the root, even when every visible leaf is destroyed. Bindweed, with an underground root system that can run for feet in every direction. Mature grassy weeds like crabgrass and quackgrass, whose narrow waxy blades shed the spray. And anything that has grown large and woody. On these, vinegar is not useless, but it is not a one-shot solution. It is the opening move in a longer campaign of cutting the plant back down every time it recovers, until the root finally runs out of energy. So here's the bottom line. The secret vinegar recipe is real. It really can erase certain weeds in 24 hours. But the secret is not the recipe. The secret is knowing which weeds, at which age, on which day, and what to do about the ones that come back. Most people fail with vinegar because they were sold a fantasy. You're not going to fail because now you know the truth. If this helped you see your yard a little differently, do me one favor, subscribe to this channel. Because the things that actually grow a healthy yard are usually the simple, honest, inexpensive things that nobody is paid to advertise to you. And that is exactly the kind of thing I'm going to keep digging up and sharing with you here. I will see you in the next one.